pink Barbie Corvette. I need $5 more. Luckily for me, it's Easter, and I know that my dad always hides one coveted $5 egg. I also know the best egg is the hardest to find. This year, I'm ready. Before long, I spot it right in the middle of my sweet 70s swing set pole. You know, the one that runs along the entire top of the set. I scramble to get the ladder and the yardstick and duct tape it to a broom handle. I fish it into the pipe and I shove that egg hard. It flies out the other side, and by the time it hits the ground, I'm waiting above it like an expectant father. The egg cracks open, and inside is the very opposite of my grand prize. Instead, a perfectly formed dog turd rolls out. I burst into loud hysterics. At the same time, my father explodes with laughter. I run as fast as I can to my room, but he's not far behind.
It's time for one of his talks.
Honey, it was clear that you already learned the important life lesson. The harder you work, the better the payoff. So, it was time that you learn another valuable lesson. Sometimes, no matter how hard you work, you just end up with shit. And who better to teach just this sort of hard-hitting, direct, and painful life lesson to 6-year-old me than my father? I'm a divorce attorney. I've been practicing for over 20 years. I began in Los Angeles, but I've owned my firm in Nevada since 2001. My firm has a particular subspecialty, men's rights. My 9 female employees and I specifically represent men in divorce and custody battles. And guess who runs the business end of my law firm? My father. In my practice, we've represented over 2,000 men, 650 of whom are fathers. My expertise not only comes from my career, but just as much from my personal life. I'm a mother. My children are 23, 15, 12, and barely 3. They come from 2 different mothers and 3 different fathers. Hooker. Let me explain. I helped my ex-husband raise our 23-year-old son, whom I didn't birth, from age 5. I share custody of my 15-year-old daughter with the same father. My 12-year-old son sadly lost his father to suicide when he was just 7, and my 3-year-old is being raised at home with his father and me. I literally live my work every day. So, what has 20 years of representing men in family law while living my own reality show as a wife, mother, and daughter taught me about fatherhood? Allow me, if you will, to start with the second thing I learned about fatherhood. Men parent differently than women, big surprise. But their influence is crucial in the development of their children. Do you know any mom in the world who would put dog shit in an Easter egg? Okay, maybe that's a good thing. Let me better demonstrate this point from my legal experience. When getting my father clients ready for court, I prepare them for this kind of interrogation. Who's your children's doctor or dentist? What's the name of your school principal or even their teacher? What grades did they get on their last report card? 9 times out of 10, they miss the majority of these questions. Seriously, does this mean they don't care or love their children as much? I bet it makes you wonder. But please hold your judgment. Here are the questions that my father clients can easily answer. If your son could be a superhero, what would his power be? What kind of monsters do your kids fear? How high does your daughter feel comfortable flying in a swing? What makes your son feel defeated? Yet, in my experience cross-examining hundreds of mothers in family court, these are the harder questions for them.
I agree with the second part of that statement. I do not agree with I find it hard to believe that 9 out of 10 of her clients didn't know, or the fathers didn't know, the name of the child's doctors or the name of the child's teachers or principals or dentists. These days, a lot of fathers are very involved in their kids' life, and I'm one of them. My kid's currently not old enough to be in school or a dentist yet, but I know both of his doctors. And when the time comes that he is old enough to be in school and a dentist, I'm going to know their names as well. And there are a lot of fathers out there that are that involved in their kids' life. They go to their kids' practice, sporting events, whether it's soccer, football, basketball. And if they've got daughters, they probably go to their cheerleading practices too. If I had a daughter, I would. Just, to be there for her. And a lot of fathers these days have that mentality. So I find it really hard to believe that 9 out of 10 fathers did not know the answer to that. However, I do agree with the part about the mothers don't know what makes their child feel defeated, and how high do they like to go in the swing set. A lot of mothers don't really kind of do those sorts of things with the kids, especially the part about the defeated, because fathers are usually the ones who are pushing their kids to try and do better and just keep trying, you can figure it out. So, and mothers don't really seem to really be on that level as far as, teaching the child. They seem to be more of the quote-unquote caretakers and, reading to them, kissing their boo-boos, putting them to bed, and, things like that. Where fathers do that stuff too, we just don't get, recognized for it. It's just not acknowledged. But we do that as well, but we just do the other side of the parenting is too. We're the ones that's teaching them the hard lessons that most of the time mothers don't really teach them.
Most of us know motherhood brings with it a sixth sense and an unspoken bond to our children. But what about...
I didn't mean to cut her off right there, but I'm just curious to know why this day and age, with all the stuff you see on many different social media sites, how we can still believe that mothers have this unspeakable bond, this maternal instinct that just happens to manifest itself when she gives birth to a child. Have you seen the women, some of these single mothers on TikTok, like for real, talking about going out to bars with guys, on Thursdays and Friday nights, and they're out till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning? Where are the kids at when that's happening, huh? If they're the caretakers, if they're the ones at home that are providing for the kids, or taking care of the kids, nurturing them, and this whole maternal instinct, then why are they at a bar with a guy, That just doesn't make any sense. So where does this idea or this myth of maternal instincts come from? And if you watched my last video, and I really hope you did, I apologize for the explicit content, but I felt it necessary to show just that right there. What she's just saying is that maternal instinct is not a natural thing. Not all women have that. Okay? And the longer we believe that story that she just said, or that statement, the more these kids are going to suffer because of it. And I believe in that last video I even stated that, if not in that one, I stated in another one, the kids are the ones that pay the ultimate price when people don't take situations serious enough. And I covered a few stories in that last video that, kind of highlights that exact same thing. There's one of a kid being hurt by his mother. There's another one of, the father got disregarded, and what happened? The mother ended up attacking the two girls, So there, and those are not the only cases. There are many, 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 and I hate to say it, way too many cases where, kids are being hurt by their mothers or put in a position to be hurt by, a significant other, So this whole idea of maternal instincts, like, we got to start holding people accountable for their actions, and this pretty much, takes the accountability away from the mothers who don't have that. It's taking the accountability away from the mothers who do horrible things to kids, and it's got to stop for the kids' sake.
How fathers? Even fathers feel insecure about this reality. After representing 650 fathers, I can count on one hand those that felt secure in their instinctive role and significance to their children. What's interesting is my anecdotal legal experience suggests otherwise. In 20 years of practice, I've had over 100 men take a paternity test, like Jerry Springer. Seriously, do you know how many were wrong in predicting their biological relation to the child? 2. This shocked me and taught me my third lesson. Fathers, too, have a genetic bond and instinct about their children from
That is one thing that you never hear society or the court system say. That fathers have a bond and a paternal instinct as well. And believe me, as a father, as a single father, and I've tried to explain that to several authority figures and they may not necessarily say they didn't believe me, but the look on their face, like, yeah, whatever kind of look, kind of told me that they wasn't even listening to what I was saying, because I was the father. And so that is something that definitely needs to start being acknowledged. And I know what I said about the maternity instinct, and it's not to say that all women don't have it. It's just saying that, let's face it, not all women do. Not all fathers have the paternal instincts, and not all mothers have maternal instincts. But there are some really good fathers out there that do have these instincts. But no one talks about that. No one addresses that. Nobody even believes it, really. I've seen the look on people's faces. Nobody actually, there are a few that believe it, and those are usually the ones who, see you with the child in a private setting, But for the most part, how many authority figures are seeing you alone with your child? You know what I mean? So, that part definitely needs to start being addressed, and we need to understand that fathers know what they're doing, fathers know what they're talking about, and fathers do have, an instinct as well when it comes to their child.
Infancy. Forget where you are for a moment, seriously, and close your eyes. I'd like to ask you to feel. Think about your childhood. Picture your father, his smiling eyes, his strong hands. Hear his deep voice. What did you love about your dad? Did he throw you high into the air? Teach you to ride a bike? Carry you home when you got hurt? Push you when you tried to give up? What did it feel like to have a daddy? Secure, fun, challenging? Now, go back in your memories and erase your father from every scene. This is what the other 40% of people's childhoods look like. Just under half the people listening to me, including my own 12-year-old son, felt sad, angry, or blank during the peak of your joy while playing along. Eye-opening, isn't it?
I do definitely agree with that. I was part of that 40% that she's referring to that grew up without a father, and from a very young age. And I'm not so much complaining about the fact that he himself wasn't there, because he was just a terrible guy. He's not the kind of father I would have wanted to be raised by, But at the same time, I never really had that father figure or that male role model to look up to either. And so as a kid, when I was a kid in school, and I would hear other kids talking about things that their dad and them did on the weekends. Maybe they rebuilt a car, or went fishing and camping and hunting and monster truck rallies and drag strips, and stuff like that. Just the kind of things that a normal good father would do with their kids. And I couldn't say anything, I couldn't relate to that. I didn't have any stories to share with them. I was just like, pretty much thinking to myself, man, that would be nice, to be able to have that. So it definitely affects a kid. And I believe, Tupac said it best, that it takes a man to teach a boy how to be a man. A woman can't do that. It's not saying anything bad about some women. I'm not going to say all women, because today, a lot of women are just not what society makes them out to be. But I'm not taking anything away from the good mothers, but at the same time, it does take a man to teach a boy how to be a man.
Nearly 2 of every 5 children in America are growing up without their fathers, or 17 million, according to the 2016 census. Other sources estimate as many as 30 million.
Look at that. One source says 17 million kids growing up without fathers. And other sources say 30 million. And either way, that is a ridiculously high number. And at the end of the day, who is to blame for that? It's the mothers, and it's society, and it's the court system. Because in most cases, it's the mothers who are taking the kid or kids away from the fathers. And it's society and the court system that allows them to do so. You see what I'm saying? And they don't understand how devastating that is to a kid to grow up without that. And again, not all fathers are good fathers. There are some fathers that, shouldn't be alone with a kid. But if you can admit that not all fathers should be alone with a kid, then you should also be able to admit that not all mothers should be alone with kids. The ones I stated or the ones I covered in my last video kind of prove that those women should not have been allowed to be alone with a kid, and yet they were. And it was a devastating cause because it was the kids who paid.
In 2011, I joined the board for a local charity called Nevada Youth Empowerment Project, or NYEP. NYEP is a housing program for homeless girls ages 18 to 24. As board president of this small charity, I've been closely involved and gotten to know the girls and their tragic stories over the years. Hundreds of otherwise homeless girls have come through our program. Their backgrounds and what they've endured would haunt you. Do you know the one thing all of these girls have in common? They all come from fatherless homes. Sadly, these girls aren't the exception. They're the rule. My 4th lesson about fatherhood came from the data. According to the Center for Disease Control, children from fatherless homes account for 90% of all homeless and runaway kids, 71% of high school dropouts, and 63% of youth suicides.
What was it? 90%, 70%, and 63%. That is extremely high numbers. Especially when you take into consideration that when you take those numbers and then you go back to the numbers that she stated of 17 million or 30 million, that is a lot of kids that are suffering because of the system and society and the mothers who take advantage of it.
While you listen to me speak, you have to be wondering, what makes fathers so crucial? Honestly, the answer is complex and better explored by psychologists.
Just a real quick note, that answer is actually not very complex, as she said. It's actually very simple. The reason men are crucial to a child's development is because men are the ones who teach a kid about boundaries. Men are the ones who teach a kid about self-respect. You see what I'm saying? So, like, mothers teach a kid, or whether it's a boy or girl, like if they're teaching a boy how to take care of a girl. And then they're teaching the girls how to get a man who's going to take care of you. Whereas fathers are teaching the boy and the girl how to take care of themselves and to not let anyone take advantage of them. Do you see the difference? We're teaching them how to stand strong and independent, actually independent, and to be able to be compassionate and, empathetic while not allowing people to take advantage of you at the same time. Whereas women don't understand that because they've never actually had to deal with that. Women are catered to, especially in today's society. Women are catered to. They just got this sense of entitlement, like you're just supposed to give them everything because they're a woman. And those are the kind of traits that they kind of push onto their kids. So that's why fathers are so crucial. We're the ones that teach boundaries. We're the ones that teach respect.
What I can tell you is that the data unequivocally tells us fathers are vital, and yet laws and society undervalue their importance, making it harder for them to be in their children's lives. Even fathers underrate their own value. I know this data upsets a lot of mothers.
The only mothers that this data should upset is the mothers that say I could do it without a man, or I could raise my child on my own. Those are the only mothers that would be upset with that data. Any mother that actually wants the child's father involved would be more upset of how or why we're not doing anything about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only ones who would have a problem with it are the ones who want that child support. They're like, no, I want to alienate the child from the father, so I'm not happy with this.
Me included. But advocating for fathers isn't about diminishing mothers. While children deserve both parents whenever possible, this crisis is specific to fathers. The occurrence of fatherlessness is epidemic.
It's specific to fathers. And she even stated that society and the court system just undermines or undervalues the fathers. And again, if you go back to the last video, and I really hope you did watch it, because the whole point of that was to bring awareness to this very subject that I'm talking about now, is that if you look at the Jeter case, and he voiced his concerns in the court, saying that the wife or the mother, might do something to the girls, and the judge was like, no, I'm not gonna buy that. Look, she's the mother. I'm gonna let her see the kids. And what happened? The girls got hurt anyway. And only one of them's still here. You know what I'm saying? So, because he was undervalued, because his opinion was undermined, he lost one kid and has another one gotta be traumatized. I would imagine so anyway.
The effects are catastrophic, and the causes are male gender specific. Nearly 30 years ago, leading child psychologist Michael Lamb reminded us, fathers are the forgotten contributors to child development. Yet, researchers have found that children with involved fathers have stronger cognitive and motor skills, elevated physical and mental health, become better problem solvers, and are more confident, curious, and empathetic.
see the benefits that fathers have on a child. This is what I'm talking about. Goes right back to what I was saying about the value that, or the undervalue that society and court systems place on the fathers. Look, stronger cognitive and motor skills, higher health and mental health, physical and mental health, problem solving skills, confidence. All because, what did she say? A father was involved. You see what I'm saying? Like, so why are we still undervaluing fathers? And if you think it's not still happening, please talk to any man who's ever went through the court system.
Sadly, we've had this data for 30 years, and fatherlessness has only continued to rise during this time.
Only continued to rise. That's exactly what I was just saying. 30 years they've had this data. 30 years they've proved the significance to a father being involved in the child's life. And yet the court system and society and are saying that we don't matter, and mothers are taking advantage of. And she listed the percentages of kids that are being affected by it, and the number of kids who are growing up without their fathers. So, I mean, at what point are we actually 30 years and nothing's been done about this? 30 years and the problem has only gotten worse.
The main contributors to fatherlessness are divorce and out-of-wedlock births. Every 13 seconds, someone in America gets divorced. That equates to almost 2.5 million divorces a year. Lucky me.
Look, I just want to touch on that one real quick. I know she was joking there, just trying to kind of cater to the crowd. But the reality is, what she said was actually, it wasn't just a joke, it was a true statement. As a divorce attorney, she benefits from fathers who are getting divorced, which is usually initiated by the mothers or the wife. And in custody cases, when a father comes to her because the mother is trying to alienate the child from him, again, she benefits from that. And that's how the system works. Like, where everything she says makes sense, you know, and she's saying she's advocating for fathers' rights. I don't personally know the woman. I don't know, beyond this video, I haven't really seen much on her. When you look at how expensive the courts are, how expensive lawyers are, like her, someone like that, easily $5,000. And that's just to represent you in court. That ain't counting the consultation fees, any private investigation that needs to be done. If you've got to subpoena witnesses, that costs money per witness that you subpoena, and other things that kind of add on to that. So you're looking at a minimum of about $5,000, and for someone like her, I would imagine it would probably be at least $5,000, if not closer to 6 or 7. You know.
Currently, more than 40%, or 1.5 million babies, are born out of wedlock each year in the U.S. And this brings me back to the first and most significant thing that my career has taught me about fatherhood. Family court is one of the critical places where fathers are disadvantaged, and this hurts kids.
And you heard her say that 1.5 million kids a year are born out of wedlock. And I would imagine that number is going to continue to rise. And the reason being is because a lot of men are realizing that not only the disadvantages that we have in court, but I mean, marriage is really nothing but a risk to men. We don't benefit from marriage at all. I mean, what do you get, a tax break? Something like that? But I mean, beyond that, marriage doesn't benefit a man at all. It only benefits women. And the reason being is, like, how many women do you know that date, especially marry, a man who makes less money than she does? Very, very, very rarely, if any. And if you make less money than she is, then you've got to be a really, really good looking dude. You know what I mean? I mean, like, that's the only really way you're going to get around that. So, and that's the deciding factor when you get into divorce court and you start going over alimony and child support. They're going to look at the level of income between both parties, and whoever makes more is the one who's going to pay. And again, what woman dates a man, or especially marries a man, who makes less money than she does? Not none. Never. Never gonna happen.
Historically, this maternal preference was solidified in the tender years doctrine, which mandated custody of children under age 4 be awarded to mothers. This doctrine was in use until the 80s. As the laws progressed, visitation for fathers improved, but it took a lot of years before the law was finally gender equal. In fact, it wasn't until 2017 that Nevada finally adopted a presumption for joint physical custody.
Look, as you said, it took a long time for laws to finally get gender equal. But earlier in her speech, she stated that fathers are disadvantaged in court. So the law is gender equal. The court system that is supposed to uphold the law is not.
When I began my practice, and until 10 years ago, the best my father clients could expect was every other weekend visitation and maybe a dinner on the off week. While significant legal progress has been made, this long-standing bias against fathers still occurs in the enforcement of custody orders, in child support rulings, and it exists in paternity laws. All the while, the number of kids growing up without dads continues to rise. Between 1960 and 2016, the percentage of children growing up with just mothers nearly tripled, from 8 to 23%.
See what I'm saying? I mean, the numbers are only getting worse. The numbers tripled. And do you know why that is? It goes right back to what I was just saying, that a lot of kids, and she even stated that 1.5 million kids, and I'm assuming that's an average. I haven't looked up the facts, but I'm assuming that's an average, which means it's probably a little more. Kids are born each year out of wedlock, which makes it easier for a woman to take off with your kids. If you're not married, she could take off with your kid, and if you're not on the birth certificate and you're not married, she could take off with the kids, and you would have to file for custody. And again, it goes right back to the price of this woman right here. I mean, at least $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, you know.
Paternity laws desperately need more reform to protect the 40% of children born out of wedlock each year in the U.S. Right now, once custody has been ordered, it's illegal to remove a child from their father, usually a felony. But it's perfectly legal in all 50 states for a woman to conceal her pregnancy, leave the father's name off the birth certificate, and never tell him he is a child, ever. How is this not kidnapping?
Exactly what I just said. Exactly what I just said. If you're not married and your girlfriend gets pregnant, girlfriend, fiance, doesn't matter. She gets pregnant. if she decides she's going to leave, and she can, for whatever reason, doesn't matter, and she can move to another state, she can move out of country, she can literally go into hiding with your kid. And unless you know for, like, just say y'all are together and she's pregnant and she leaves before she has the kid, then, like she just said, she can conceal the birth, meaning she not tell you, and a mother has the right to decide who can and cannot get the information. And I personally know that from experience. But she can decide whether or not to allow you at the hospital. She can decide whether or not to allow you to call the hospital to find out if the child was born. And so, again, basically concealing the birth of your child. And as a man, if you're not married and you want to, see your kid, you want to fight for custody, first you have to have proof that he's born, he or she. You have to have proof that the kid is born, because unfortunately there are some stillborn. So you have to have proof that the child is born and alive at the time that you file for custody. So if she conceals the birth and you don't have that proof, you can't even file for custody. And you can't even do that unless you file for DNA. But again, you can't do that unless you don't know the kid's born. Because if a child is born out of wedlock, and again, as she stated, choose to leave the father's name off the birth certificate, means you have to go through the DNA process to prove that you are the father, simply because she chose to tell everybody that you're not. So you have to jump through all these hoops to prove that you are the father, if you're lucky enough to find out whether or not the child is born. Fortunately for me, because I actually had to go through that, I was not allowed to be at the hospital. I was not allowed to call the hospital to find out if my son was born. It was literally concealed from me. And the really messed up part about it is the new guy was allowed to be there, and they were posting pictures all over social media, which is the only reason I found out the child was born in the first place. So because I had that, I was actually able to fight for my rights, because they decided to be, I don't really know how to explain it, but because they decided to post it all over social media is how I was able to actually fight for my rights. But if they wouldn't have done that, if they would have kept it all quiet and took off with them, I'd have never been able to file for my paternity rights. And this lady here, who is a family law attorney, clearly stated that in every state in the United States, that is perfectly legal. There is no law that prevents a woman from taking off with your kid if you are not married.
Just as horrible, a woman can knowingly list the wrong father on a child's birth certificate, deceive him, and a short while later, in many states, the wrong man becomes that child's legal father forever. He's obligated to a child that isn't his, and that child just lost their real father with little to no recourse. This is a betrayal of the worst kind, and the law not only allows it, it creates the opportunity.
It don't just create the opportunity, it encourages it. Why you think, surely by now, the older you get, the more likely you have heard of the housing projects or public housing or public assistance or whatever. Those places are designed specifically for what she's talking about. For mothers who want to take off with a kid and conceal the birth. Because she can lie on the form. She can just be like, well, the father's not involved. The father's not here. He doesn't want to be a part of it. So I need a place to live. And of course, because society today in 2021 caters to women, they're going to be like, okay, sure, here you go. You need a house? Sure, we're going to give you a house. You need your lights paid? Sure, we're going to pay for your lights. You need water bill? Sure, we're going to pay for your water bill. You need food? Sure, we're going to pay for that too. So they don't just create the opportunity, they encourage it, and a lot of women who live like that, and there's a community of them that get together and they come up with all these different ways to actually take advantage of that system. They're like, oh, well, if you want a little more, why don't you put this on the application next time? You see what I'm saying? Like, so they have nothing to do all day long, so they sit around and just kind of share ideas on how to cheat the system. And because they're able to do so, and because the system just keeps catering to them, you know, what incentive do they have to actually do anything about it? Why would they get out and work if the system is going to take care of them? You see what I'm saying? And I mean, they even get free Medicaid or Medicare. But you be a man and try to do that. Be a man and file for public housing. See how well that works out for you.
This is what we know. Every bit of data we have tells us children need their fathers. The law, its application, and society at large disfavor fathers. The law is improving, but the statistics are not. So, what can you do?
And again, the law is improving, meaning the law has come a long way to be gender equal. The reason the stats are not improving is because the court system, meaning the judges, do whatever they want to do. And who's holding them accountable? You see what I'm saying? Like, they already know when they're reviewing your case, when they're hearing your case or whatever, they already know. They can size you up. And for the most part, unless you're an upper class person going through this kind of thing, a judge can pretty much decide whether or not you have the money to afford an appeal, which lets him know he can rule it any way he wants to, and there's nothing you can do about it. And most men and a lot of society in general hears the common phrase, man up, or take it like a man. The reason that is because men are the ones who have to deal with the injustice. And regardless of the level of injustice that we have to deal with, we're told, take it like a man. You don't have a choice in the matter. I'm the judge. I decide your fate. This is what's going to happen. Take it like a man.
We are the change makers, all of us. If you're a father, make the effort. Do everything you can to be in your children's daily lives.
I agree with that to an extent. I agree with the fact that every man should make an effort to be in your child's life for the most part. Like, me personally, for one, I saw it coming. I was proactive in the matter. I knew I was going to end up having to fight for my kid. So I started saving money, which I'll cover in a second. But the reason I agree with it is because the reason I did that was because I agree with the part of putting in the effort. Please do everything you can to be equally involved in your kid's life. And I mean, like, the way I saw it when I was going through mine was that he's mine too. Okay, like everybody says, it takes two to tango, it takes two to make them. So both parents, and she even stated that it was mandatory that, you know, a woman gets primary custody. My personal opinion, as long as both parents are good parents and they're providing for the child right, they're taking care of the child like they're supposed to, and the child is safe in both places, I believe both parents should have equal time with the child automatically. I think that should be automatic. But in my case, I wasn't settling for any less. And I encourage any man that's going through this process, if you're able to do so, go through that with that mentality that you're not going to take any less than 50-50. Because that's where my mentality was at, even against my own attorney's advice. He was telling me, because she was offering to give me 3 days, and I was like, no. He's my kid too. You get him for a week, I get him for a week. And she was like, I'm not giving it to you for a week. And my lawyer was like, well, maybe you should just take 3 days. And I said, no. I said, he is my son. I made him. Got half my DNA, actually more than half based on the charts, but I made him, she made him, we split the time, plain and simple. And that's the way I was. But the other part of it is where she's talking about making effort, is the way she's saying it is she's making it sound like every man can afford this. You know, and if you're a middle class and upper class guy that's going through this system, then you may be able to afford it, and it's still going to end up costing you a lot of money, but you're going to be able to afford it. But the blue collar people, and I'm one of them, so I can speak from a blue collar standpoint, it's not easy to just come off of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, you know, because we have to have a house, and we have to have a car, and we have to have, you know, gas to get back and forth to work. We have to have food for you and the kid, and whatever else is, you know, all the other necessities, you know. So a lot of blue collar guys can't just afford this. And when she says make the effort, what I say to that is make it accessible. Because when she's talking about making an effort, she's talking about you as a man dish out $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for every other weekend, because that's likely what you're gonna get. You see what I'm saying? And men, we know, and as she's already stated in this speech, the men, we already know that going into court, we're disadvantaged. So when you say make an effort, okay, why are, like, granted, like, again, I'm not saying why are we spending this kind of money for every other weekend when you should do everything you can to be a part of your kid's life. But if we're spending this kind of money, we ought to be guaranteed 50-50. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of guys are not getting that.
If you're a mother, encourage and facilitate the relationship between your children and their father instead of trying to interfere or control it.
Okay, look here. Okay. It's just kind of like a weird thing to follow up the last point with. Okay, you're going to tell fathers to make an effort. And I'm not saying anything against this woman specifically, like I don't have anything against her, but just that statement. Alright, fathers make an effort. And mothers encourage the bond between the child and the father. Men would not have to make the effort that she was referring to if women were encouraging men to be in their child's lives. You see what I'm saying? Like, if a woman actually wanted a man involved in her child's life, the court system wouldn't even be necessary. Because y'all would be able to work that out amongst yourselves. She would be like, look, this is not working out, but I still want you to have equal time with your child, so how about we make a consensual agreement that we get him every other week? You see what I'm saying? So a mother who would encourage her, or a mother who encourages that, that's how they would be. But how many men actually get that kind of maturity? None. We have to go through the court system. So how can you say make an effort and then tell women to encourage it, not try to control it, when we would have to make an effort if they weren't doing that? And as she stated, the problem is not getting better, the problem is getting worse.
If you're a child, spend time with your dad. Ask him to do something. Seek his advice and guidance. If you're an employer, grant the fathers you employ the ability to be at their children's events, to help in their schools, to take sick days to care for their kids. If you work...
I agree with that part. Like, as a single father, and I've been doing it on my own, 50-50. Like, at least the time that he's with me, like, it's all on me. And even though I have him in a daycare, if he's sick, obviously he can't go to daycare. Okay? And a last-minute babysitter is not necessarily easy to find, especially since I'm not just going to leave him with anybody. And I've had to deal with those dirty looks that I get from my bosses when I have to take a day or two off of work because my boy's running a fever. And they're like, well, you need to figure something out. You need to figure out a way to get here. We got other guys here that have kids too, and they seem to make it just fine. And the two problems with that is, for one, they just completely disregarded the fact that my son was sick, like as if your company means more than my son's life. Get the out of here, you know what I mean? Like, he's first and always will be. First and foremost, going to come before anything. So if he's sick, I don't care about anything else. I'm dealing with that. All right? And number two, when a lot of the guys I work with, from what I've noticed, they're either married or the custody arrangement that they have is either every other weekend or every weekend. So they either have a wife at home who's taking care of the sick kid, or they don't have them during the week. So even if they're sick, they've only got to deal with it on the weekend, so they don't have a reason to not be there. I seem to be at least the only one in my building that has a kid for the whole week by myself every other week. I seem to be the only dad in there with that kind of life. You know what I mean? Like, so they don't seem to comprehend how that works. They're like, well, we got all these other people here that seem to manage just fine. I'm like, yeah, well, they got a network of people helping them out. See what I'm saying? But not all fathers have that. Like she says, like, y'all, like, as a company wise, and I hope like CEOs and stuff are watching this too, y'all need to understand that fathers are stepping up these days. Okay? It's like, if you look back into the 60s and 70s, maybe even the 80s, you know, a lot of them were just, they went to work, they went to the bar with their buddies, and they might have tucked their kids in for bedtime, but that was pretty much it. These days, men are much more involved in their kids' lives, so you need to start kind of, you know, understanding that and start making some changes in your company to be able to, you know, give them what they need to be able to provide for that child or to take care of that child when necessary.
Work in the legal field, help us continue to progress, change the laws, and ensure that they're enforced to protect fathers and their children. The importance of this pursuit cannot be overstated. The fate of nearly half of America's children depends on it. I'd like to close by asking all of you to do one final thing. Please stand if you are able, or raise your hand. I'm serious, please. If you grew up without a father, if you raised or raising a child without a father, or if you were a father who's been separated from your child. Now, look around. The people really affected by fatherlessness. Really, look. Those of you standing and raising your hands aren't numbers. You're real, living, and feeling humans.
Wow, that is very, very, very true. The problem with it is the society and the people looking at all this quote-unquote data are not understanding that. It's like when she's talking about nearly half of the kids, meaning 40% of the population of kids, that's the only number that's all the people that are doing these tests. That's what they see. They see that number on a piece of paper. They see that 40 and a percentage sign. They don't see the number of people. They don't see the faces. They don't hear the stories. They just see the number. So if you take that 40% and you line them up around the White House, then that 40% turns into faces. You see what I'm saying? So like they start looking at it a little different. Now it's not just a number on a piece of paper. Now you see who you're affecting. And that's the problem, is they don't actually consider that when they're looking over all of this data. They're just looking at a bunch of numbers.
Or the children scarred by fatherlessness. Now let me tell you who can't stand. The 1,000 fatherless children who were murdered last year. The 3,000 fatherless children who died from drugs. The 3,200 fatherless children who committed suicide last year. And the 14,000 fatherless children who were incarcerated.
So you heard the number that she had the numbers that she went over. And, I mean, that's not even in a lifetime. That's per year. Alright? And the reason I do these videos, this one and especially the last one, and actually most of mine, is to bring awareness to the effects that fatherlessness puts on the kids. You know, like, personally, my son has been and is probably still currently caught up in that, where I've had several people has either threatened or has actually tried to take my son away from me. And that's not even considering concealing the birth, but that too. But out of all the people that have either threatened or tried, not one of them have considered how my son would feel about that. And one of them people that had threatened that, you know, my son may be taken away from me was a lawyer during my second case. And, well, her lawyer, not mine. But he was like, you know, are you sure you don't want to drop this, because you might just lose everything? And for somebody to say something like that and not even consider how the child would feel about that is a really, really messed up, especially for somebody who is a family law attorney, to say that you might not see your son anymore after this. You see, and what makes that so messed up is the people that have threatened or have tried to take him away from me don't fully understand the bond that me and him have. And like, that's why I stated, like, earlier when she was talking about the questions that she prepares her clients for. That's why I stated that I don't believe that, is because as a father, like, I know the things that she said that her clients didn't know, which was why I find it hard to believe, because a lot of men do know that stuff. And, you know, I'm very involved in his life. I'm very attached to him, and he's very attached to me. And so all these people that have threatened to take him away from me, or have or continuously trying to take him away from me, not one of them has thought about how he would feel. Like, have you even considered that he doesn't want to be taken away from his real dad? Have you ever considered how sad he would be about that? No. But because you didn't even hesitate to threaten it. And you didn't even hesitate to even bring it up. So like when the messed up thing is she's talking about all these kids who were involved, and she's a family law attorney as well. And from my own personal experience, I just now caught the fact that she never actually mentioned this through the entire speech. When it comes to family law court or family court, the rules state that the court system, meaning the judge who is residing over your case, is supposed to consider the child's best interest up front. That's supposed to be the most important factor. And with all these threats that have been made to me, and all these attempts that have been made, and even a lawyer telling me that I might not see my son anymore, tells me that my son's benefit has never even been considered. You know who they consider? The mother. They don't consider the father. They don't consider the child or kids. However, if you got more than one, then there's kids. But I mean, the kids are never even considered, yet they're the ones who are affected the most. So how can a society allow that to happen? And again, the reason I do these videos is to bring awareness to that specific fact right there. Is the fact that when you're looking at divorces, when you're looking at custody cases, and even in cases where CPS is involved, the child is never even considered. How sad is that? And I'm really kind of sketchy using this word, and I'm not going to put the definition of it on the screen, but you're willing to look it up. Look up the definition of filicide. And in 2019 alone, there were over 1,800 kids who were victims of that. And of those victims, 43% of those were caused by mothers. And that was just in 2019. That's the most up-to-date test that I saw. And out of the majority of those cases, there was at least 2 or 3 CPS investigations that led to nothing due to unfound reasons. And the sad part about it is how many more kids have to get hurt before we start looking at the real issues? How many more kids are going to pay the price for your negligence, for the system's negligence, for the society's negligence? And I don't mean yours specifically, but I mean society and the court system's negligence on being able to spot these things. Because if you look at the AJ Friend case that I covered in my last video, I mean, that boy put up with that for years. And there wasn't just officers and doctors who I mean, there was officers and doctors and neighbors who took pictures and wrote statements trying to get the boy some help. But the system would not help him. You know what actually got the other 2 removed? HA's death. Before they finally took it serious. Why did it take one kid in a body bag for them to see that there was a problem? Is that really what it takes for a society to say, okay, maybe she's not a good mom? Really? I mean, does nobody see a problem with that? I really hope you do, because that's the point of these videos. I'm not doing this for any other purpose than to bring awareness to this issue. The kids are very, very much paying the price because nobody is doing anything to help them. Nobody is considering them.